What is up, people of YouTube? I'm your host Vernon. This is Las Vegas Wash. Let's fish that. Alright, ladies and gents, we made our way out to the Las Vegas Wash. The idea being we're going to use some night crawlers and see if we can get on some fish. But I want to use one of these things in this video. This is of course an automatic hook setting rod holder. You can find these quite easily on places like Amazon. And it seems like every YouTuber has made a video with one of these little things. And of course it's my turn to do so. But I do always make a twist. And that is why I want to have a different look at using these little rod holders. But before I can pass judgment on how they work, I first need to catch some fish on them to see whether they work. Alright guys, I hope that the water rushing in won't be that loud, but it is good to see all this water going back to Lake Mead. But we are here today for the little automatic hook setting rod holders. Now these things were originally designed for something like carp fishing. I know Dwayne Jr., also known as Blue Hand Fishing, he uses them when he's going carp fishing. The general idea behind it, most of the times you have a split second in which you have to set the hook or the fish gets away, and this does it automatically for you. Now the way this works, you stick it in the ground and you load your rod holder with your rod facing out towards the water, and you hook your line around this little trigger we have here. And as soon as the fish pulls on the trigger, we have a rather violent, quick movement to lift your rod, and that sets the hook for you. Now this works great for carp fishing, especially when they pull the line. That's what's going to release your little trigger, but it does also work for other fish. And closer to the end of the video, I'll give you my thoughts on these little rod holders. We are 2 licensed anglers out here. That means we can use 4 rods. We have 2 little rod holders, so we're going to be putting out 2 with baits, and the rest we're going to be using some lures or small hooks and stuff, and see what other fish we can find out there while we wait for these to get some action. Alright, so why fish this particular spot? Well, I do know that this particular hole in front of us, it has some big carp, some big catfish. I don't know whether the moving baits, if that's something they'll be going for. These worms are floating around in the water. That is why I wanted to fish in this particular spot. With these automatic hook sets, you don't want the hook to be set on something as simple as your lead weight just washing around. So that's testing whether these things actually only set off when there's a fish near them, or whether something like the current can set them off. Alright guys, finally had a little hook set. Got our fish on. Don't know what it is yet. Problem with this embankment we're fishing on, it's a bit of a drop to get down to the water. We have a tiny little channel cat. Quickly gonna boat flip him. There we go. First fish on the board, channel catfish. Be very careful when handling catfish. You don't want to get spined by their barbs. They have on the 2 front fins and this back one, they have some bony spines. You don't want to get spined. So make sure you have a good proper grip on the fish. We got the fish hooked nice in the corner of the mouth. And we have to use some pliers to get the hook out, because it went all the way through the fish's jaw. But there we go, catfish landed. Let's get him back to the water. Alright guys, I'm thinking this is a little male. He's croaking. That's normally something the males do. But we got him back to the water safely, so let's release him. And off he goes. One good quick kick and he goes down into the depths. And there we go, guys. Fish landed for the wife.
It's such light line.
On this particular rod we're using some specially light line. On this rod we're using some 4-pound line. Quite a decent fight for this little channel catfish on that light setup.
Right in the corner of the mouth. There we go. Nice little channel cat. It's croaking at me. And we'll release it with a net. So there's a little bit of a deeper pool just down there. There he goes.
He's going to make his way out of this deep pool back into the deeper waters.
Another channel cat.
Wife is killing them today. She's on another fish. Quickly gonna get over there. Bit of a smaller catfish, but at least we're getting fish, and this one's landed in the net. Lovely colors on them. The wife is using a little trout magnet with just a piece of night crawler on there, just drifting it down into the current. Right, had some issues with the hook getting stuck down there, but let's get him back to the water. While I'm already down here in the water, quickly just going to release him.
Other way.
And there he goes, out of the net, swimming back to deeper water. Alright guys, finally got a little bass. Dark colors on this little bass. We got him on a little gummy tail thing. Lovely little largemouth bass. Look at the dark colorations on him. Yellow on the fins, dark spots. Let's get this little guy back to the water. And off he goes. Very quick, just swam off. And again, another little bass. I think I kind of figured it out. Cast over to the other side, let it go down a bit. And then we're getting these tiny little guys. Again, very dark colorations. This one almost looks like a smallmouth, but it's a largemouth with that big mouth for the size of the body. And best way to know whether it's a largemouth or a smallmouth is to have a look at the jaw. If the jaw extends past the eye, then it's definitely a largemouth. If it's in front of the eye, it's most likely a smallmouth. Let's get this guy back to the water. And off he goes. And there we go, another fish on. Probably the biggest one for the day so far. Completely ripped his lip with this. But nice decent fish. Also very dark colorations on him. But still largemouth bass. Doesn't have the yellow, but let's get him back to the water. Look at the lovely colors, the dark dots on this one. and off he goes. And wife is on the fish. Let's get over there.
So this rod, while I was rebaiting or getting a new hook, this one just hit. So let's see if we can get this. A nice little channel cat. Oh, don't go to the rocks.
Right, so normally we will use the net to get this fish out, but we're not going to be able to use the net here. So we're hoping that the line's going to hold, trying bringing this catfish up. Okay, hou die katrol vas. Dan lig jy. And there we go, got him all the way up. Bit of a bigger catfish than the other ones. Let's quickly get the hook out. You can see the automatic hook setter has that hook directly in the corner of the fish's mouth, but it's gone through his lip back into his cheeks. It makes it a bit difficult to get the hooks out. That's why we're using the pliers. So unless the line broke, there was no way this fish was going to get off that hook. But we got the hook out, so let's get decent sized catfish back to the water. And it's not just me that actually does the fishing. The wife catches her own fish and releases her own fish.
Forcing him to get out is now the key concern. Keep swimming back into the net. Let's see, there we go. There he is. And off he goes. So the wind has picked up a little bit and it's quite breezy. But you can see no movement or budging on the actual rod holders, which is a good thing. I think the mechanism is pretty robust, that it literally needs to pull sufficient line for it to jump up.
This little pool that we're fishing in is loaded with little bass. Not giant fish, but at least we're getting some fish out there. This little guy's ferocious. He took the entire back tail part of my little grub. But decent little fish. Decent fight for such a small guy. Let's get him back. Just gonna put him back into the water. And off he goes. This one is in no hurry, swimming ever so slowly back to some cover. And once again, tiny little bass. Good to see that there's a big population of tiny bass. That means there will always be fish around, but they're not that big. Or maybe I just don't know how to catch the big ones around here, but we're getting some decent small bass. Let's get this guy back to the water. Gonna have to give him a drop, so I'm dropping him head first. And there he goes.
Alright, ladies and gents, we now fished out here for 4 hours. In the last hour and a half, it's only the small little bass that we're biting. Didn't get anything on the baits we were soaking out there, but we still had a good time here at the creek. That's a good thing about creeks. You can always find lots of small fish, and we got some decent catfish out there as well. Now, one thing that is a bit concerning, I'm not seeing any sunfish, bluegill or green sunfish, not seeing any tilapia, nor am I seeing any of the big carp that I know usually swim around in this pool. But clearly there is still fish around, and I specifically wanted to test our little auto hook set rod holders, thinking that with the current pulling on our line the entire time, it's a good test. You don't want that thing to go off and set the hook without there being any fish nearby, so any pulling on the line is not necessarily the fish that needs to be set, and these little rod holders did pretty well in that regard. And I have to say, I understand why people use them. The thing setting the hook for you means that the fish is already hooked. There's no chance of you missing that fish, and like most YouTubers will show you, these things work, especially when catching stuff like catfish. But I do want to give a big caution when wanting to use these little rod holders. It is very important that you understand the gear that you are fishing with. You do not want to be using these little rod holders with something like a medium heavy or a heavy rod, something that doesn't have any flex in them. When this little rod holder pops up, it's very excessive, the amount of force it puts into setting the hook. If you're using a very stiff rod and it's something like an 8-foot rod, that movement is going to move the fish 8 foot in the water as well. So you need stretchable line and flexible rods, otherwise you can damage the fish, and that is very important. That is why I called this video Lip Ripper, because that's what these things do. The way they set the hook, they're always going to tear the fish's mouth. It's a very violent tug that this thing gives out. So just be aware of that. If you want to catch something like catfish, even stripers, these things work pretty well. But be very careful when using it for carp. Carp have very soft mouths, you can quite easily rip off the lips, as well as with carp you need to let them be able to take line. So if your drag is loose, you might not even be able to actually set the hook. So finding the right balance with that is important. But as far as any other fish, this can work for catching smaller fish as well. Just be aware, if you're ripping the fish out of the water, you can damage the fish, and we don't want that. Alright guys, but that was just a quick summary of the little rod holder. I want to thank you guys for following us out here. If you enjoyed the video or learned something, please do give me a little thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, consider hitting the subscribe button, joining my community, and feel free to ask any questions down below in the comments. And I want to thank the wife for braving the heat out here with me. I want to thank you guys for following us, and I'll see you next time.